After spending a full week sunbathing with his mistress, my husband finally strolled into the maternity ward to see our newborn son. The nurse just looked at his fresh tan and told him his wife had checked out 7 days ago. I am Kendra, 35 years old, and my family thought my forensic accounting career was just a boring desk job until I used it to dismantle their entire lives. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to outsmart people who mistook your silence for weakness. I am gripping the plastic side rails of a sterile hospital bed. The fluorescent lights overhead are blinding and another contraction rips through my abdomen. My son is coming. I dial Trey's number for the 11th time. It goes straight to voicemail again. The nurses exchange those quiet, pitying looks that women give each other when a man fails to show up. I refuse to cry. I shut down the fear creeping up my throat and compartmentalize the pain. I look directly at the attending nurse and demand an epidural and a clear line of sight to my vitals monitor. I am a lead forensic accountant. I deal in hard facts, not fairy tales, and the indisputable fact right now is that my husband has abandoned me in the delivery room. I focus on the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. It becomes my metronome. Hours later, pushing through a haze of exhaustion and sheer willpower, I give birth to my beautiful son, Malik. I am completely surrounded by medical professionals and scrubs, but fundamentally, I am alone. I hold my baby boy against my chest, making a silent promise that I will be the only safety net he ever needs. 24 hours post-delivery. The physical pain is a dull ache, but my mind is razor sharp. While Malik sleeps soundly in his plastic bassinet, I open my iPad to check a few urgent work emails. An automated iCloud notification suddenly pops up on my screen. It is a photo stream sync from Trey's phone. He had claimed he was trapped at a rural real estate development site in upstate Georgia, a place supposedly devoid of cell towers. But the high-definition photos loading onto my screen tell a drastically different story. He is not in rural Georgia. He is in Cabo San Lucas. I stare at a picture of my husband holding a frosted margarita, his other arm wrapped tightly around a woman named Vanessa. I know her name because she is tagged in the metadata. Then my phone vibrates on the bedside tray. An automated fraud alert from our joint platinum credit card registers a $15,000 charge for an exclusive luxury cabana at a 5-star resort in Mexico. My heart stops for exactly 1 second. Then the grief instantly crystallizes into cold, hard focus. I do not throw my phone. I do not scream into my pillow. I am an auditor. When I find a discrepancy, I do not panic. I dig deeper. The heavy hospital door clicks open. I look up expecting to see a guilty husband rushing in with apologies. Instead, it is Chloe, the white wife of Trey's brother DeAndre. She saunters into the room carrying a pathetic bouquet of wilted gas station flowers and wearing a poorly concealed smirk. She places the cheap daisies on my tray table with a dramatic sigh. She immediately launches into a rehearsed script attempting to gaslight me right there in my hospital bed. She claims Trey experienced a massive cellular blackout at the rural site and that DeAndre is currently driving up there to physically retrieve him. I listen to her lie without blinking. My eyes track from her deceitful smile down to the fresh, glaring tan lines on her shoulders. Then I look at the bag slung over her arm. It is a limited edition canvas tote bag from the exact same luxury resort in Cabo that just billed my credit card. The realization hits me like a physical strike. It is not just Trey. The entire family knows. DeAndre and Chloe were there covering for him while I was pushing a child out of my body. They are entirely complicit. This is not just a cheating husband. This is an organized betrayal by the people I allowed into my life. Chloe pulls up a chair and crosses her legs, acting entirely too comfortable for a woman standing in the middle of a burning bridge. She leans forward, putting on a mask of fake sympathy that makes my stomach turn. She tells me that childbirth is making me hormonal and that I should just focus on resting while the men handle the business. The audacity of her words rings through the quiet room. She actually thinks I am a weak, recovering patient who will just accept her absurd narrative. She does not realize that my analytical brain has already cataloged every inconsistency in her story. I notice the faint smell of premium coconut sunscreen lingering on her skin. I see the fresh braided extensions in her hair, a style she absolutely did not get done in Atlanta over the last 2 days. Everything about her screams tropical vacation while she sits here feeding me a story about a muddy construction site in Georgia. I keep my expression completely neutral. I ask her gently how the drive up to the site is going for DeAndre. Chloe does not miss a beat. She tells me the roads are terrible, and the rain washed out the main highway, making it impossible for Trey to leave. It is a fascinating lie considering there has not been a single drop of rain in Georgia for a week. I let her continue digging her own grave. I ask her if she has managed to speak to Trey at all. She shakes her head, maintaining eye contact with the practiced ease of a habitual liar. She swears nobody has heard from him, but assures me he will be devastated that he missed the birth. I nod slowly, letting the silence stretch between us. I want her to feel comfortable. I want her to feel victorious. It is always easier to dismantle an opponent who thinks they have already won. My phone buzzes again. Another charge notification. This time it is a $2,000 charge at a high-end seafood restaurant right on the beach in Cabo. I glance at the screen and then back at Chloe. She is busy looking at her nails, admiring a fresh manicure that perfectly matches the colors of the resort tote bag. The pieces of the puzzle are locking into place with terrifying precision. Trey and DeAndre run a real estate brokerage together. A brokerage that I helped structure and secure funding for using my immaculate credit and professional reputation. They have always relied on my financial acumen to keep their business afloat. And now they are using the very accounts I managed to fund a massive deception. I look down at my newborn son. Malik is sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the treacherous family he has been born into. I make a silent vow to him right then and there. I will not let these people drag him into their chaos. I will not raise my son in a family where betrayal is a group activity and loyalty is treated like a joke. The sadness that had been threatening to overwhelm me completely evaporates. It is replaced by a profound sense of clarity. I know exactly what I have to do. I look back at Chloe. She is still rambling about how hard Trey works and how much pressure he is under. I interrupt her mid-sentence. I tell her I am tired and need to rest. I ask her to leave. She looks slightly offended that I am dismissing her so quickly, but she gathers her things, making sure to flaunt that Cabo tote bag one last time. She tells me to call her if I need anything, as if she has not just participated in the most agonizing betrayal of my life. I watch her walk out the door, the cheap flowers left behind on my table like an insult. The moment the door clicks shut, I reach for my laptop. It is time to go to work. I log into the secure server that holds all the financial data for Trey and DeAndre's brokerage. I bypass the standard user interface and dive straight into the raw ledgers. It does not take long for my trained eyes to spot the anomalies. Large sums of money being shuffled between dummy accounts. Expenses categorized as equipment maintenance that actually trace back to luxury travel agencies. Huge withdrawals marked as contractor payments that correspond exactly with dates of expensive jewelry purchases. They have not just been taking a vacation on the company dime. They have been systematically bleeding the business dry for months. And because my name is attached to the holding company as a primary guarantor, they are putting my financial future at massive risk. The depth of their entitlement is staggering. Trey thought he could leave me in a hospital room to endure the physical trauma of childbirth alone, while he sipped cocktails on a beach with his mistress. He thought he could use his brother and sister-in-law to pacify me with ridiculous lies. He fundamentally misunderstood who he married. He married an auditor, a woman whose entire career is built on finding hidden truths and exposing financial corruption. He mistook my quiet, supportive nature for stupidity. That is a mistake that will cost him everything. I begin downloading every single ledger, every fraudulent receipt, every altered bank statement. I compile a digital dossier of their financial crimes, saving it to an encrypted offshore cloud drive that they do not even know exists. I work meticulously cross-referencing dates and times, matching the fraudulent charges with the photos I saved from Trey's iCloud sync. The picture of him and Vanessa holding margaritas matches perfectly with a business dinner expense logged under client acquisition. The luxury cabana charge aligns seamlessly with an entry labeled Emergency Site Excavation. It is textbook embezzlement, and it is incredibly sloppy. They never expected anyone to actually look at the numbers. They never expected me to look. The hospital room is quiet save for the soft hum of the medical equipment and the steady breathing of my son. I sit there bathed in the blue light of my laptop screen, methodically dismantling the financial foundation of my husband's entire life. I do not feel anger anymore. Anger is a hot, chaotic emotion that makes people reckless. What I feel is absolute cold resolve. I am going to strip away every single asset, every comfort, every ounce of unearned privilege that they have enjoyed at my expense. I close my laptop and place it carefully in my bag. I look down at my hospital gown, then at my son. I press the call button for the nurse. When she enters, I do not ask for painkillers or water. I ask for discharge papers. She looks concerned, telling me I need to stay for observation. I calmly explain that I am checking out against medical advice if necessary. I have a son to protect and an empire to burn down. There is no time to rest in this bed while the people who betrayed me are still treating my life like a joke. I am going to show them exactly what happens when you try to play a game with the person who wrote the rules. I insist on the discharge paperwork, keeping my voice polite but absolutely firm. The attending physician arrives, attempting to dissuade me, citing the risks of leaving so soon after a strenuous labor. I listen respectfully, but my decision remains unyielding. I sign the liability waivers with a steady hand. Every signature feels like a step toward my liberation. I carefully dress my newborn son in the soft green onesie I had packed weeks ago when I still believed his father would be here to carry him to the car. I secure him in his car seat, wrapping a warm blanket around him to protect him from the harsh hospital air conditioning. I handle every task with a terrifying calmness. The nurses offer to help me to the exit with a wheelchair, a standard protocol, but I decline the assistance. I walk out of that maternity ward under my own power, carrying my son and my laptop, the only two things in the world that truly matter to me now. I order a premium ride share service instead of calling a friend or a family member. I need complete silence. I need a vacuum of outside influence so my plan can solidify without interruption. The driver, a quiet older gentleman, helps me load my overnight bag in the car seat. As we pull away from the hospital, navigating the busy Atlanta streets, I look out the window at the city I helped Trey conquer. I remember the late nights reviewing commercial leases, the weekends I sacrificed to build the financial models that convinced the banks to fund his initial real estate ventures. I poured my intellect and my credit score into creating a legacy for our family. He took that legacy and used it to fund a secret life with a woman named Vanessa, while his brother and sister-in-law cheered him on. The profound injustice of it all fuels my determination. I will not let them keep a single dime of the wealth I generated. During the ride, I begin making the necessary phone calls. I do not call my parents or my friends to cry about my broken marriage. I call my private wealth manager. I bypass the pleasantries and issue a direct order to freeze all liquid assets in my personal accounts, preventing any outward transfers. I instruct him to flag the joint accounts for suspicious activity, effectively putting a hold on the very credit cards Trey and DeAndre are currently using to fund their extravagant lifestyles. My wealth manager asks no questions, simply confirming the execution of my directives. Next, I contact a specialized property management firm I have used for corporate clients. I lease a high-security luxury penthouse in a downtown high-rise, using my Ghost Limited Liability Company to sign the paperwork. It is a property completely untraceable to my personal name, providing me with an invisible fortress where I can orchestrate my next moves safely hidden from Trey and his complicit family. The car pulls up to the residential gates of the sprawling suburban estate Trey and I purchased 3 years ago. The house stands massive and quiet, a monument to my hard work and his vanity. I carry Malik inside the silence of the empty foyer echoing around us. This house was supposed to be filled with the sounds of a joyful homecoming. Instead, it feels like a crime scene. I walk through the rooms, observing the expensive custom furniture, the curated art pieces, the high-end electronics, all purchased with my bonuses and my financial planning. Trey always loved showing off this house to his friends, playing the role of the highly successful provider. He loved the image of wealth more than the responsibility of maintaining it. I realize now that he never loved me. He loved the security and the status I provided. I was simply the administrative engine that powered his ego. I lay Malik in his nursery, a room I spent months painting and decorating. The walls are a calming shade of sage green, and the crib is filled with soft stuffed animals waiting to be loved. I watch his chest rise and fall, marveling at how perfectly innocent he is. He deserves a mother who demands respect, not a mother who shrinks herself to appease a deceitful husband. I softly close the nursery door and head to my home office. The real work begins now. I have frozen the accounts, but I need to sever the physical ties to this property. I pull up this contact information for an elite moving company known for handling high-profile, rapid relocations. I book their premium service for the very next morning. My instructions to them are highly specific. They are to pack and remove everything that belongs to me, which happens to be almost every valuable item in the sprawling house. I intend to leave Trey nothing but the bare walls and his own worthless possessions. As I finalize the moving logistics, my phone screen lights up with another notification. It is a text message from Chloe asking if I am feeling better and reminding me that the business loan documents are time-sensitive. The sheer arrogance of her message makes me scoff. She is sitting in a luxury resort sipping cocktails paid for by my credit card while trying to hustle me into signing away my financial security from my recovery bed. I do not reply. I block her number entirely. I block DeAndre. I block Trey. I sever every digital avenue they have to reach me. Let them enjoy their sunshine and their stolen margaritas. Let them bask in the false security of their deception. The storm is coming for them, and they will not even see the clouds gathering until the lightning strikes. I spend the rest of the night reviewing the corporate bylaws of their real estate brokerage. As the primary guarantor and holder of 51% of the voting shares, I possess unilateral authority to initiate structural changes in the event of gross financial misconduct. The embezzlement I uncovered more than qualifies. I draft a formal notification of a shareholder freeze, effectively paralyzing the company operations. They cannot buy, they cannot sell, they cannot approve any contracts without my signature. I am meticulously constructing a legal and financial cage around them, locking the doors one by one. By the time the sun rises over Atlanta, I have transformed my heartbreak into a weapon of mass destruction. I am no longer the grieving wife left behind in a hospital room. I am the lead forensic accountant, and I have just initiated the most ruthless audit of their lives. The moving trucks arrive right on schedule, the heavy diesel engines rumbling in the quiet suburban cul-de-sac. A team of efficient, uniformed professionals swarms the house, following my exact directives. I stand in the foyer holding on, directing traffic with absolute precision. The custom velvet sofas, the imported dining table, the state-of-the-art home theater system all disappear into the back of the massive trucks. I watch them pack away the expensive wardrobe Trey bought using the company expense account, leaving only the cheap clothes he owned before we met. The house is systematically hollowed out, stripped of the elegance and luxury I had provided. The echoing emptiness of the rooms reflects the current state of my marriage. Within hours, the sprawling estate is reduced to a cavernous shell. I leave his dusty gaming console sitting in the middle of the bare living room floor, alongside a cheap air mattress. It is exactly what he deserves. A fitting throne for a man who built his entire life on lies and parasitic behavior. The movers finish their work and depart, heading toward my secure downtown penthouse. I take one last look around the empty house. There are no tears left to shed. The fear and the vulnerability of the delivery room have been entirely replaced by a profound sense of empowerment. I step out the front door, lock it securely, and walk to my waiting car. I secure Malik in his seat, taking a moment to gently kiss his forehead. We are leaving the debris of a fraudulent family behind us. We are moving toward a future built on absolute truth and undeniable strength. As I drive away from the neighborhood, I check my phone one last time before discarding the old SIM card. A final automated alert pops up on the screen. Trey's credit card has just been declined at a luxury boutique in Cabo San Lucas. I smile as I merge onto the highway. The financial guillotine has dropped, and the execution has officially begun. Chloe stops pretending to care about the baby the moment she realizes I am fully alert. The wilted gas station flowers are shoved aside on the bedside table. She reaches into that limited edition Cabo tote bag and pulls out a thick manila folder. She drops it directly onto my hospital tray, right next to my untouched breakfast. The heavy thud of the paper is the loudest sound in the sterile room. She tells me that since Trey is stuck in a cellular blackout, he asked her to bring these urgent documents for my signature. I look down at the bold printed title on the first page. It reads Wealth Protection Agreement. My analytical mind immediately dissects the situation. A wealth protection agreement presented to a woman less than 24 hours after giving birth, while her husband is supposedly unreachable. It is an insult to my intelligence. I am a lead forensic accountant. I spend my days untangling complex corporate fraud and tracking hidden assets. I do not sign papers I have not thoroughly audited. I ask Chloe to explain exactly what it is I am looking at. She adjusts her posture, attempting to look authoritative. She claims it is just standard paperwork to shield our personal assets from Trey and DeAndre's real estate brokerage. She says the business is taking on some aggressive new commercial development projects, and they want to make sure my son and I are completely insulated from any corporate liabilities. Her voice is dripping with fake concern. She tells me that Trey wants to secure the financial foundation of our family and that he would never forgive himself if something happened to our wealth. I pick up the document. I note the weight of the premium paper, the specific legal phrasing, and the structure of the indemnification clauses. I read through the first 3 paragraphs, and the truth jumps off the page with glaring clarity. This is not a wealth protection plan. It is a commercial loan guarantee disguised as a marital asset division. They are not trying to shield my personal holdings from corporate fallout. They are trying to bind my liquid assets to their sinking ship. I flip to the second page, scanning the dense paragraphs. The clauses are written to look like a standard post-nuptial agreement, establishing separate property, but buried deep in the financial addendums is a complete transfer of my immaculate credit score and my personal investment portfolios. The document explicitly names me as the primary guarantor for a multi-million-dollar commercial line of credit. The real estate brokerage is not expanding into aggressive new development projects like Chloe claimed. It is failing. They are bleeding cash rapidly, and the banks have absolutely cut them off. Trey and DeAndre need a co-signer with pristine financial records to secure a massive capital injection just to keep their charade alive for a few more months. They sent Chloe to manipulate a physically exhausted postpartum woman into signing away her entire financial independence. I look up from the papers. Chloe is holding out a silver pen. Chloe pushes the pen toward me, demanding I sign it for the family's legacy. She tries to rush me, saying the notary is waiting in the hallway, and the deadline for the bank is at the end of the business day. She emphasizes how much Trey is counting on me to be a supportive wife and how crucial this capital is for our son's future. I do not raise my voice. I do not show an ounce of the rage burning in my chest. I simply ask her why DeAndre is not the primary guarantor if the business is doing so well and generating such high revenue. Chloe stammers for a fraction of a second, her eyes darting away before she recovers her composure. She claims DeAndre is restructuring his own commercial assets to optimize his tax burden, and that Trey insisted on keeping this specific deal within our immediate household to maximize our profit share. Every single word out of her mouth is a calculated lie designed to exploit my supposed vulnerability. I look at her fresh tan lines again. I think about the $15,000 charge at the Cabo luxury resort that hit my phone just minutes prior. They are currently burning through my hard-earned money to fund an extravagant vacation with my husband's mistress. And now they have the audacity to stand in my recovery room and demand the keys to my entire financial kingdom. They have severely underestimated who they are dealing with. I am not a naive partner who blindly trusts a charismatic frontman. I am the architect of our wealth. I am the person who built the financial models that convinced the banks to fund their initial ventures. I set the papers back down on the tray, aligning the edges perfectly. I tell Chloe that I cannot possibly sign a binding financial document while under the influence of heavy hospital painkillers. I explain that my current medical state would legally invalidate the agreement, and the bank underwriters would reject the loan application the moment they saw the timestamp on the signature. It is a factual statement, but it is also a deliberate tactical maneuver to buy time. Chloe's fake supportive smile falters immediately. She insists that Trey already cleared it with their corporate lawyers, and that a simple signature right now will save the entire deal from collapsing. She leans over the hospital bed, her tone shifting from supportive sister-in-law to a demanding, impatient accomplice. She tells me I am being difficult and overthinking a simple routine request. She says my intense, overbearing energy is the exact reason Trey is under so much stress. She claims that if I actually trusted my husband instead of interrogating everything he does, he would not need to take separate trips to clear his head. She is weaponizing my professional personality to gaslight me into compliance. She implies that my refusal to be a blind, submissive wife is destroying my marriage. I keep my breathing steady. I let her words hang in the empty space between us. I reach over to my bedside table, where the nurse had left a large cup of scalding hot black coffee. I pick it up, my hand perfectly stable. I look Chloe directly in the eyes. I tell her that I think she is absolutely right about one thing. I do have an intense personality. With a deliberate, measured motion, I tip the cup. The dark liquid cascades directly onto the stack of legal documents. The hot coffee completely saturates the pages, ruining the meticulously drafted commercial loan guarantee. The ink bleeds, immediately turning their fraudulent wealth protection plan into a soggy brown mess. Chloe shrieks and jumps back, frantically brushing droplets off her designer dress. She stares at the ruined papers in pure horror. She screams at me, asking if I have lost my mind. She tells me those documents cost thousands of dollars to draft, and that Trey is going to divorce me and leave me with nothing when he finds out what I have done. I calmly press the red call button attached to my bed. I do not break eye contact with her. I tell her that she can tell Trey and DeAndre that the bank deadline will just have to wait. I inform her that my son and I need to rest, and that she has exactly 30 seconds to gather her wilted flowers and her Cabo tote bag before the hospital security team escorts her off the maternity ward. She stands there trembling with a mix of fury and panic. She realizes she cannot force me to sign a pile of soaked trash. She snatches her bag from the chair, her face flushed red. She throws one last threat, telling me that I have just destroyed a Black-owned family business and that I will regret treating them this way. She turns on her heel and marches out of the room, slamming the heavy wooden door behind her. The room falls silent again. I look down at the dripping documents on my tray. They thought they could use my postpartum state as a weapon against me. They thought exhaustion would make me compliant. Instead, they just handed me the exact blueprint of their financial desperation. I slide the tray table away and reach for my encrypted work laptop. I whisper to my sleeping newborn son, promising him that nobody will ever steal his future. They think they own the company, but they forgot who audits the books. I look at the silver pen trembling slightly in her manicured hand. For the family legacy, she says again, her voice tight with artificial sweetness. I let the silence stretch out in the sterile hospital room. The only sound is the rhythmic hum of my newborn son's vital monitor. I do not reach for the pen. Instead, I gently push the tray table an inch away from my chest. I look directly into her eyes and tell her clearly that I will not be signing a single page of her fraudulent contract. The transformation is instantaneous. The supportive sister-in-law act completely evaporates. Chloe drops her hand and her face contorts into a nasty, condescending sneer. The mask slips and the real reason she was sent here bleeds out into the open. She crosses her arms and lets out a sharp, judgmental laugh. She tells me that I am being ridiculously difficult. She says this exact behavior is why Trey had to leave in the first place. I listen as she weaponizes my personality against me. She paces at the foot of my hospital bed, delivering a barrage of calculated insults. She tells me my intense, overbearing energy is suffocating my husband. She claims I do not know how to be a soft, supportive wife. She says a man like Trey needs peace and compliance, not a business partner who constantly interrogates his every move. She actually stands there looking at a woman who just gave birth alone and justifies my husband's infidelity by blaming my ambition. She says Trey needed a soft, relaxing getaway because my aggressive nature drove him away. The sheer audacity of her words is breathtaking. Here is a white woman trying to orchestrate the theft of my financial assets while simultaneously telling me I am the problem. She attempts to use every tired microaggression against me, painting me as the angry, controlling black woman who emasculated her husband. She thinks she can break down my self-esteem while I am physically vulnerable. She expects me to cry. She expects me to defend myself or start screaming so she can label me as hysterical. I do absolutely none of those things. I sit up slightly, adjusting my pillows to ensure I am perfectly comfortable. I look at her fresh tan lines and that ridiculous designer tote bag paid for by my credit card. I feel a profound sense of calm wash over me. It is the clarity that comes when you finally realize you have outgrown the people who are trying to shrink you. I do not raise my voice a single decibel. I tell Chloe that she is absolutely right about one thing. I tell her I do have an intense, overbearing energy. I reach over to my bedside table. My fingers wrap around the large cardboard cup of scalding black coffee the night nurse had brought me earlier. I maintain unwavering eye contact with Chloe. Her condescending smirk begins to falter as she watches my steady hand. With a deliberate and entirely calculated motion, I tip the cup forward. The dark, steaming liquid cascades directly onto the stack of pristine legal documents. The coffee completely saturates the thick paper. I watch the expensive black ink instantly bleed and blur, turning their precious wealth protection agreement into a soggy, ruined mess. I pour out every last drop, ensuring that the signature lines are entirely obliterated. Chloe shrieks. It is a loud, piercing sound that echoes off the hospital walls. She jumps back frantically, brushing hot coffee splatters off her expensive dress. She stares at the ruined documents in pure, unadulterated horror. She screams at me, asking if I have lost my mind. She yells that those contracts cost thousands of dollars to draft, and that the bank deadline is in a matter of hours. She tells me I just destroyed a family business, and that Trey is going to divorce me and leave me with absolutely nothing. I do not flinch. I calmly reach over and press the red call button attached to my bed rail. The intercom crackles to life, and a nurse asks if I need assistance. I speak in a smooth, even tone. I tell the nurse that I have a highly aggressive visitor who is causing a disturbance in the maternity ward, and I need security to remove her immediately. Chloe's face flushes a deep, angry crimson. She realizes she cannot physically force me to sign a pile of wet trash. She knows she has failed the one task Trey and DeAndre sent her to do. She scrambles to grab her ruined papers, but the wet pages tear apart in her hands. She snatches her luxury tote bag off the chair, breathing heavily, her chest heaving with fury. She points a manicured finger at me and spits out one last threat. She promises me that I will regret treating their family this way, and that Trey will make me pay for this disrespect. I look down at my sleeping son, then back up at her panicked face. I tell her to get out of my room before I have her arrested for trespassing and attempted financial fraud. Two heavy-set security guards step into the room a moment later. They take one look at Chloe's erratic behavior and immediately flank her. They firmly instruct her to move toward the exit. She tries to maintain her dignity, but she is practically dragged out of the recovery wing, her heels clicking frantically against the linoleum floor. The heavy wooden door clicks shut behind her, cutting off her dramatic protests. The room falls completely silent again. I am alone with my son, the faint smell of spilled coffee lingering in the air. I slide the ruined documents off my tray and toss them directly into the trash can. They thought exhaustion and heartbreak would make me compliant. They thought a few cruel words would make me surrender my power. Instead, they just handed me the exact blueprint of their financial desperation. They showed me their weakness. I pull my encrypted work laptop out of my overnight bag and set it on my lap. The screen illuminates my face in the dim hospital lighting. I type in my master password. I whisper softly to my newborn son, promising him that nobody will ever steal his future or dictate his worth. They think they own the company and the assets. They forgot who actually audits the books. The soft glow of my laptop screen casts a pale blue light across the dark hospital room. My fingers move across the keyboard with practiced precision. I bypass the standard employee portals, and access the secured administrative gateway for Trey and DeAndre's real estate brokerage. I built this network architecture for them 3 years ago to ensure their data remained pristine. Now I am using the administrative backdoors I designed to tear their entire facade to the ground. I pull up the master general ledger. I do not look at the polished quarterly summaries they show to their investors or the sanitized reports they bring to family dinners. I dive straight into the raw, unedited transaction logs. It only takes me 4 minutes to spot the first anomaly. There is a recurring outgoing wire transfer labeled as site surveying consulting fees. The payments are massive and they are being routed to a third-party vendor I do not recognize. I run a quick background trace on the vendor tax identification number. It does not belong to a commercial surveying firm. It belongs to a luxury automotive dealership in downtown Atlanta. DeAndre's brand new custom SUV, the one he parroted around at our last barbecue, claiming it was a reward for his relentless business hustle, was not a sign of success. It was stolen straight from the company operating budget. A cold knot forms in my stomach, but my hands do not stop typing. I filter the search parameters, applying a forensic algorithm to isolate Trey's specific executive spending. The sheer volume of misappropriated funds makes my breath catch in my throat. I watch the numbers cascade down the screen, exposing a trail of undeniable financial devastation. Trey has been methodically siphoning cash from client escrow accounts to cover his personal credit card balances. I trace the money directly to the charges I saw on his synced iCloud photos. The romantic getaways with Vanessa, the high-end jewelry, the exclusive dinners. He has been funding his double life by illegally dipping into client deposits. He is committing blatant wire fraud right under the noses of his investors. But simple corporate theft does not explain the sheer desperation in Chloe's voice earlier. It does not explain why they needed my signature on that fraudulent wealth protection agreement, less than 24 hours after I gave birth to my son. I need to find the absolute bottom of this financial sinkhole. I navigate to the restricted files containing their recent commercial loan applications. I find a pending file marked urgent with a major national bank. I open the attached PDF and my blood turns to ice. The document is a comprehensive risk assessment for an 8-figure commercial line of credit. Trey and DeAndre have severely manipulated their balance sheets to project false solvency, but the bank underwriters were clearly not fooled by their creative accounting. The bank demanded hard liquid assets to back the loan. As I scroll down to the collateral section, I see my own name staring back at me. Trey has listed the residential properties that are legally deeded solely in my name. He has pledged my personal retirement accounts and my private investment portfolios as secondary collateral. He even forged preliminary financial disclosures implying that I was fully aware and already on board as a willing guarantor. The realization hits me with the force of a physical blow. That document Chloe brought to my hospital bed was the final puzzle piece they needed to legally bind me to their sinking ship. If I had been tired enough or naive enough to sign those papers, I would have authorized the bank to seize everything I have built over the last 10 years, the moment their brokerage inevitably defaulted. They are not just dealing with a cash flow problem. They are drowning in millions of dollars of toxic debt. The business is on the verge of complete collapse, and instead of facing the consequences of their financial incompetence, they conspired to use me as their human shield. They wanted to drain my accounts to pay for their massive mistakes. Trey abandoned me in the delivery room while actively planning to bankrupt me. I look away from the screen and stare at the blank hospital wall. I think about the years I spent sacrificing my own free time to help them balance their books and secure their initial funding. I think about the Atlanta networking events where Trey would stand in his expensive tailored suits, playing the brilliant self-made entrepreneur while I stood quietly in the background. He loved taking the credit for the empire I silently engineered. I think about how he always smiled and kissed my cheek, telling me how lucky he was to have a brilliant wife keeping his business on track. Every compliment was a calculated manipulation. Every sweet word was just a tactic to keep me compliant while he picked my pockets. I feel a dangerous kind of clarity wash over me. I am no longer just a scorned wife dealing with a cheating husband. I am the target of a coordinated financial heist, and I am about to become their absolute worst nightmare. I open a new encrypted window and begin drafting a series of legal and financial directives. I am the primary guarantor on their foundational business accounts, which means I have the unilateral authority to initiate an emergency freeze in the event of suspected fraud. I do not hesitate. I execute the commands locking down their primary operating accounts, their payroll funds, and their corporate credit lines. In a matter of seconds, I choke off their entire cash supply. I imagine the domino effect this will cause. The checks to their contractors will bounce tomorrow morning. The automatic payments for their luxury leased vehicles will trigger insufficient funds alerts. Next, I access our joint personal accounts. I systematically liquidate every shared asset, legally transferring exactly 50% of the funds into an ironclad, irrevocable trust established solely in my newborn son's name. I leave exactly what he deserves, which is his half of a rapidly dwindling checking account that will soon be devoured by his own exorbitant spending. I close my laptop and carefully pack it into my overnight bag. The sterile hospital room suddenly feels suffocating. I cannot stay here another minute. I press the call button and wait for the attending nurse. When she arrives, I do not ask for assistance or pain medication. I look her straight in the eye and tell her to bring me my discharge papers immediately. She tries to argue, citing hospital policy and the need for postpartum rest, but my tone leaves absolutely no room for negotiation. I am done resting. I am done waiting for a husband who is never coming back. I carefully wrap my beautiful son in a soft blanket, lifting him gently from the plastic bassinet. He is the only family I need to protect now. I sign the liability waivers with a steady hand, refusing the mandatory wheelchair. I walk down the bright hospital corridor carrying my child and the digital evidence that will destroy my husband's empire. I step out into the warm Atlanta air, ready to start a war they have absolutely no chance of winning. After spending an entire week sunbathing in Cabo with his mistress, my husband finally strolled into the maternity ward to see our newborn son. The nurse just looked at his fresh tan and told him his wife had checked out 7 days ago. I am Kendra, 35 years old, and my family thought my career as a lead forensic accountant was just a boring desk job, right up until I used it to dismantle their entire lives. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to outsmart people who mistook your silence for weakness. I grip the plastic side rails of the sterile hospital bed until my knuckles turn white. The fluorescent lights overhead are blinding, and another massive contraction rips through my abdomen, stealing the breath straight from my lungs. My son is coming. I dial Trey's number for the 11th time. The phone rings twice and goes straight to voicemail again. The nurses moving around my bed exchange those quiet, pitying looks that women give each other when a man fails to show up for the most important moment of a marriage. I refuse to cry. I shut down the primal fear creeping up my throat and force myself to compartmentalize the intense physical pain. I look directly at the attending nurse and demand an epidural and a clear line of sight to my vitals monitor. I am a lead forensic accountant. I deal in hard, irrefutable facts, not romantic fairy tales, and the indisputable fact right now is that my husband of 6 years has abandoned me in the delivery room. I focus on the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor, letting it become my metronome to block out the overwhelming isolation. Hours later, pushing through a thick haze of exhaustion and sheer willpower, I give birth to my beautiful son Malik. I am completely surrounded by medical professionals in blue scrubs, but fundamentally I am entirely alone. I hold my fragile baby boy against my chest, pressing my cheek to his warm head, making a silent, unbreakable promise that I will be the only safety net he ever needs. 24 hours post-delivery. The physical trauma has settled into a dull, throbbing ache, but my mind is razor sharp. While Malik sleeps soundly in his clear plastic bassinet, I open my iPad to check a few urgent work emails. An automated iCloud notification suddenly pops up on my screen, demanding my attention. It is a photo stream sync from Trey's phone. He had looked me right in the eye 3 days ago and claimed he was trapped at a rural real estate development site in upstate Georgia, a place supposedly completely devoid of cell towers and internet access. But the high-definition photos loading onto my screen tell a drastically different story. He is not in rural Georgia dealing with construction delays. He is in Cabo San Lucas. I stare at a picture of my husband shirtless and smiling, holding a frosted margarita. His other arm is wrapped tightly around the waist of a woman named Vanessa. I know her name because she is tagged directly in the image metadata. Before I can even process the sheer audacity of the photo, my phone vibrates on the bedside tray. An automated fraud alert from our joint platinum credit card registers a $15,000 charge for an exclusive luxury cabana at a 5-star beach resort in Mexico. My heart stops for exactly 1 second. Then the heavy, suffocating grief instantly crystallizes into cold, hard focus. I do not throw my phone across the room. I do not scream into my hospital pillow. I am an auditor. When I find a glaring discrepancy, I do not panic. I dig deeper. The heavy hospital door clicks open, interrupting my digital investigation. I look up expecting to see a guilty, panicked husband rushing in with a mouthful of desperate apologies. Instead, it is Chloe, the white wife of Trey's older brother DeAndre. She saunters into my recovery room carrying a pathetic bouquet of wilted gas station flowers and wearing a poorly concealed triumphant smirk. She places the cheap daisies on my tray table with a dramatic, heavy sigh. She immediately launches into a rehearsed script attempting to gaslight me right there in my hospital bed while my body is still healing from labor. Chloe claims Trey experienced a massive catastrophic cellular blackout at the rural site, and that DeAndre is currently driving hours out of his way to physically retrieve him from the mud and the rain. I listen to her elaborate lie without blinking. My eyes track from her deceitful, sympathetic smile down to the fresh, glaring tan lines on her shoulders. Then I look at the bag slung casually over her arm. It is a limited edition canvas tote bag from the exact same luxury resort in Cabo that just billed my platinum credit card 15 minutes ago. The realization hits me like a physical strike to the chest. It is not just Trey. The entire family knows. DeAndre and Chloe were there covering for him, distracting me while I was pushing a child out of my body. They are entirely complicit in this deception. Chloe pulls up a chair and crosses her legs, acting entirely too comfortable for a woman standing in the middle of a burning bridge. She leans forward, putting on a mask of fake sisterly sympathy that makes my stomach churn. She tells me that childbirth is making me hormonal and overly anxious, and that I should just focus on resting while the men handle the stressful business issues. The audacity of her words rings through the quiet room. She actually thinks I am a weak, recovering patient who will just blindly accept her absurd narrative. She does not realize that my analytical brain has already cataloged every single inconsistency in her story. I notice the faint smell of premium coconut sunscreen lingering on her skin. I see the fresh, expensive braided extensions in her hair, a style she absolutely did not get done in Atlanta over the last 48 hours. Everything about her screams tropical vacation, while she sits here feeding me a story about a miserable, muddy construction site in Georgia. I keep my expression completely neutral, masking the lethal storm brewing inside me. I ask her how the treacherous drive up to the site is going for DeAndre. Chloe does not miss a single beat. She tells me the dirt roads are terrible and the heavy rain washed out the main highway, making it completely impossible for Trey to leave the site. It is a fascinating lie considering there has not been a single drop of rain in the entire state of Georgia for a week. I let her continue digging her own grave. I ask her if she has managed to speak to Trey at all. She shakes her head, maintaining direct eye contact with the practiced ease of a habitual liar. She swears nobody has heard from him, but assures me he will be absolutely devastated that he missed the birth of his firstborn son. I nod slowly, letting the heavy silence stretch between us in the sterile room. I want her to feel comfortable. I want her to feel victorious and smart. It is always easier to dismantle an opponent who believes they have already won the game. My phone buzzes again. Another charge notification illuminates the screen. This time it is a $2,000 charge at a high-end seafood restaurant located right on the beach in Cabo. I glance at the screen and then back at Chloe. She is busy looking at her hands, admiring a fresh manicure that perfectly matches the vibrant colors of her resort tote bag. The pieces of the puzzle are locking into place with terrifying precision. Trey and DeAndre run a commercial real estate brokerage together. A brokerage that I personally helped structure and secure funding for using my immaculate credit and my pristine professional reputation. They have always heavily relied on my financial acumen to keep their business afloat and their ledgers balanced. And now they are using the very accounts I managed to fund a massive coordinated family deception. The conflict escalates in my mind from a simple marital betrayal to an organized financial and emotional ambush. I am not just dealing with a cheating husband. I am dealing with an entire family of parasites who think they can play me for a fool while spending my money. The automatic sliding doors of the hospital close behind me, sealing away the most vulnerable 24 hours of my entire life. The thick, humid Atlanta air wraps around me like a heavy blanket, but I feel absolutely nothing but ice in my veins. I am holding my newborn son Malik securely against my chest. His small, fragile body is the only thing tethering me to reality right now. I step up to the curb and pull out my phone. A normal, heartbroken wife would send a massive emotional paragraph right now. She would type out her pain, her fury, and her profound sense of betrayal. She would demand answers from her husband. She would call her in-laws and scream into the receiver until her throat bled. I look at Trey's contact name on my screen. I think about him lying on a beach in Cabo with his mistress while I was pushing our child into the world. I do not type a single word. I delete our entire message thread. I delete his contact information. I do not send him a dramatic text message announcing my departure. I do not call DeAndre or Chloe to curse them out for their disgusting complicity. I choose absolute total radio silence. Silence is a psychological weapon that narcissistic manipulators simply do not know how to fight. They thrive on the reaction. They feed on the chaos. I am going to starve them to death. I bypass the standard chaotic taxi stand and summon a private premium black car service. When the sleek tinted SUV pulls up to the curb, the driver takes one look at my hospital admission bracelet and my tightly wrapped newborn. He asks absolutely no questions. He simply opens the heavy door with a respectful nod. I slide into the cool leather interior. I instruct him to head downtown toward the financial district, instead of directing him toward our sprawling suburban estate. I am not going back to the house. Going back to the house means stepping onto their playing field. It means exposing myself to the emotional debris of a fraudulent marriage. I am severing the physical connection immediately. While the vibrant city of Atlanta blurs past the tinted windows, I pull out my phone to make only logistical calls that actually matter right now. 2 years ago, when Trey and I first started managing higher-profile commercial real estate acquisitions, I quietly established a ghost limited liability company registered in Delaware. I structured it completely independent of our marital assets, citing the professional need for a sterile holding entity to manage out-of-state client funds. Trey never paid attention to the administrative paperwork or the complex corporate structuring. He just liked cashing the massive checks and playing the role of the brilliant self-made executive. He never cared about the foundation, and as long as the penthouse looked good. That ghost company is now my absolute salvation. I call my dedicated corporate real estate broker. I bypass all pleasantries and tell him I need immediate occupancy of a high-security executive penthouse in the heart of Buckhead. I demand a building with 24/7 armed concierge service, highly restricted elevator access, and strict biometric entry protocols. I tell him I need a fortress in the sky, and I need the keys within the hour. I do not ask about the monthly lease price. I authorize the wire transfer directly from my secure corporate accounts. I am building an impenetrable physical barrier between my son and the toxic parasites who share his DNA. I am doing it before Trey even finishes his next tropical cocktail, as the luxury SUV navigates through the heavy afternoon traffic. I perform the final act of my digital disappearance. I open the back of my personal cell phone and extract the tiny plastic SIM card. I roll down the tinted window just a fraction of an inch and let the SIM card fall out into the rushing wind of the highway. That small piece of plastic holds 6 years of compromised memories, thousands of meaningless text messages, and the last remaining bridge to my treacherous in-laws. It clatters against the asphalt and disappears forever. I activate a secondary highly secure mobile device that I always carry exclusively for encrypted financial audits. I migrate only the professional contacts I trust. I establish a new private number. DeAndre and Chloe do not make the list. Trey does not make the list. I have officially ceased to exist in their world. The black SUV pulls up to a towering modern glass high-rise right in the center of the financial district. The armed security detail is already expecting my arrival. They escort me through a private subterranean garage, avoiding the main lobby entirely. We walk directly to a dedicated elevator that requires a retinal scan for access. As the heavy stainless steel doors slide shut and we ascend 40 floors above the bustling city, I look down at my sleeping son. He is completely unaware that his entire world has just violently shifted. He does not know that the father who was supposed to protect him is currently funding a double life with stolen money. He only knows the warmth of my chest and the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. I press my lips to his soft forehead, promising him that this elevation is permanent. We are never going back down to their level. The elevator opens directly into a sprawling, immaculate penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer a breathtaking panoramic view of the entire Atlanta skyline. The space is decorated in cool, neutral tones of slate and charcoal. It is spotless, modern, and completely devoid of any history with my husband. There are no framed wedding photos sitting on the mantel. There are no expensive gifts purchased with embezzled funds. There are no compromised memories lurking in the corners. It is an absolute blank slate. It is the perfect sterile environment for a forensic accountant to conduct an execution. I walk through the massive open-concept living room and head straight into the master bedroom. I lay Malik down in the exact center of the massive king-sized bed, creating a safe barricade of plush hotel-quality pillows around his tiny body. I stand by the window looking down at the tiny cars crawling along the streets far below. From up here, the city looks like a complex matrix of moving parts and interlocking systems. I know exactly how to dismantle a system. I open my overnight bag and pull out my heavily encrypted work laptop. I set it up on the sleek glass dining table, transforming the luxurious space into a tactical war room. I am no longer a heartbroken wife waiting by the phone for a cheating husband to validate her existence. I am no longer accessible to the toxic family members who tried to gaslight me in my hospital bed. I have completely removed myself from the physical plane they occupy. To them, I am now a ghost. I have vanished into thin air, leaving absolutely no trace of my whereabouts. But I am a ghost with a high-speed wireless connection, a master degree in forensic accounting, and a righteous vengeance burning a massive hole through my chest. I plug in the power cord and boot up the system. The screen glows brightly, reflecting in the large glass windows. They expect me to be crying. They expect me to be frantically searching for answers. They expect me to play the role of the hysterical, betrayed woman so they can easily manage the fallout. They have no idea that by abandoning me, they simply handed me the time and the absolute clarity I needed to sever their lifelines. I am going to let them enjoy their false sense of security for just a little while longer. I am going to let Trey enjoy the Cabo sun. I am going to let DeAndre and Chloe believe they successfully distracted me from the collapsing business. Because when the inevitable financial strike happens, I do not want them to be prepared. I want it to be a complete and total devastation. I flex my fingers over the keyboard, ready to execute the next phase of the operation. The sun rises over the Atlanta skyline, painting the glass of my penthouse windows in brilliant shades of gold and amber. I have barely slept a single hour, but my energy is completely boundless, fueled by a cold and absolute clarity. I close my laptop screen, having successfully frozen the corporate accounts and transferred my liquid assets out of the blast radius. The digital architecture of my husband's fraudulent life has been entirely dismantled. Now it is time to address the physical world. I pick up my secure phone to make the call. I mapped out during the early hours of the morning. I contact an elite white-glove moving and logistics firm renowned for executing rapid, discreet corporate relocations. I pay a massive premium for a same-day emergency extraction. I give the dispatcher strict, non-negotiable instructions. We are going to conduct a total asset liquidation of my suburban estate. I leave my sleeping son safely at the penthouse in the care of a highly vetted private nanny I secured through my corporate risk management network. I cannot bring a newborn into a tactical zone. I ride back to the suburbs in my black car service, meeting the convoy of 3 large moving trucks at the entrance of our exclusive gated community. I punch in the security code and the heavy iron gates swing open, allowing the massive vehicles to roll through the quiet, manicured streets. We pull up to the $1.5 million estate I purchased 3 years ago. The house stands quiet and majestic, wrapped in a facade of wealthy domestic bliss. It is a towering monument to my meticulous financial planning and Trey's incredibly fragile ego. I unlock the front door and step into the grand foyer. The lead foreman, a broad-shouldered man holding a digital clipboard, walks in behind me and asks what exactly needs to be packed. I look at him with a perfectly flat expression and tell him everything. I instruct him that if an item is not physically nailed to the drywall, it goes into the back of those trucks. He nods, signaling his crew. A team of 12 uniformed men swarms the house, operating like a highly trained tactical unit. I stand in the center of the sprawling living room, directing traffic with the absolute precision of an auditor zeroing out a balance sheet. I view the entire house as an unbalanced ledger, and I am simply correcting the deficit. I watch the crew carefully wrap my custom Italian velvet sectionals in thick protective padding. I direct them to the formal dining room, where they systematically dismantle the massive 12-seat mahogany table I purchased with my first major corporate bonus. I walk into the kitchen and point to the high-end espresso machine, the imported dual-zone wine fridge, and the professional chef-grade cookware. All of it goes into heavy-duty boxes. I refuse to leave a single ceramic plate or a single silver fork for my husband to use. He will not serve takeout to his mistress on dishes I bought. I will not allow his complicit sister-in-law Chloe to ever lounge on my furniture with a glass of my expensive wine again. They are entirely cut off from the luxury I provided. I take the sweeping staircase up to the master suite. This is the room where the betrayal feels the most potent, the space we supposedly shared as partners, while he was plotting to bankrupt me. I instruct 4 movers to clear out the massive walk-in closets. I tell them to meticulously pack up all my designer clothes, my shoes, my handbags, and my jewelry. Then I point directly to Trey's side of the closet. I tell the movers to pack every single custom-tailored suit, every expensive watch, and every pair of designer leather loafers he bought using the embezzled real estate company funds. Legally, those assets were purchased with stolen money from a holding company, which I now unilaterally control. He does not get to dress like a self-made millionaire when he is actually just a common thief. I leave him only the cheap, faded gym shirts and worn-out sneakers he owned before he met me. I leave him the wardrobe of the man he truly is. I walk down the hall to the nursery. I have the crew carefully and respectfully disassemble the crib, the rocking chair, and the changing table. I pack away every soft baby blanket, every unread storybook, and every single stuffed animal. I am completely erasing my newborn son's physical footprint from this fraudulent home. My child will not have a single memory attached to a house built on lies. Everything associated with his pure existence is loaded onto the trucks heading toward our new impenetrable fortress in the sky. Within 4 hours, the sprawling estate is systematically hollowed out. The beautiful curated spaces are reduced to cavernous echoing shells. The polished hardwood floors are completely bare, amplifying the sound of my footsteps. The walls are stripped of the expensive modern artwork I spent years collecting, leaving behind only faint rectangular shadows on the pristine paint. The house looks exactly like an abandoned property left to decay. I walk back down the stairs to the main living room. There are only 2 items left in the massive space. I ordered the movers to leave Trey's dusty video game console sitting flat on the bare floor directly in front of the wall, where our 85-inch smart television used to hang. Next to it, I place a cheap twin-sized air mattress, still wrapped in its clear plastic retail packaging. I bought it at a corner pharmacy on the drive over here. It sits in the center of the vast empty room. It is the exact monetary and emotional equivalent of his actual contribution to our marriage. I thought he could abandon his wife in a delivery room while he lived a five-star lifestyle on my dime. Now he can come home and inflate his own bed. I sign the final inventory manifest on the foreman's digital clipboard. The heavy truck doors slam shut, echoing down the quiet street. I watch the convoy pull out of the driveway, heading toward a highly secure climate-controlled storage facility located on the complete opposite side of the city. They are taking the entire physical manifestation of my marriage and locking it away in a steel box. I stand on the front porch and take a deep breath of the thick, warm Georgia air. I do not feel any nostalgia looking at the beautiful brick exterior. I do not feel a single drop of sorrow. I pull the front door shut, locking the heavy deadbolt. I walk to the edge of the manicured lawn and drop my house keys directly into the dark iron storm drain on the curb. I hear them splash into the water below, disappearing forever. I get back into my waiting car and instruct the driver to return to the financial district. I lean back against the cool leather seats as the suburban neighborhoods fade into the distance. I return to the absolute safety and silence of my high-rise penthouse. I relieve the private nanny, thanking her for her time. I pick up my sleeping son, holding him tight against my chest. The physical extraction is totally complete. The digital trap has already been set and the jaws have snapped shut around their accounts. Now all of that is left is the waiting. Trey is scheduled to fly back from Cabo San Lucas tomorrow morning. He expects to walk through the front doors of a luxury estate, prepared to feed a vulnerable, forgiving wife a fabricated story about a rural cellular blackout. He expects to find me exhausted and compliant, easily manipulated by his practiced charm and his fake apologies. He expects his brother and his sister-in-law to help him manage my emotions and keep the money flowing. He is about to walk into an empty, echoing box that perfectly mirrors his own character. The shockwaves are about to hit, and I will be watching the entire collapse from 40 stories up, completely untouchable. 7 days pass in absolute immaculate silence. I spend the week bonding with my newborn son in the safety of our high-rise penthouse, entirely insulated from the toxic chaos I left behind in the suburbs. We establish a peaceful routine. I do not spend my postpartum days crying over broken wedding vows or wondering why I was not enough for my husband. I spend them watching the sun rise over the Atlanta skyline, holding Malik close to my chest, and watching the digital traps I set snap shut one by one. The financial fallout is instantaneous and beautiful to witness. Sitting at my glass dining table with my encrypted laptop, I monitor the holding company ledgers in real time. On Tuesday morning, the first wave of disaster hits their real estate brokerage. The automatic withdrawal for their premium downtown office space lease triggers an insufficient funds protocol. The payment bounces. 4 hours later, a massive check they wrote to a commercial contractor for a high-profile development project is flatly rejected by the bank. My screen lights up with internal bank alerts as the corporate credit lines are completely frozen due to my fraud investigation mandate. DeAndre and Chloe are undoubtedly panicking, but they cannot reach me. I have severed all digital and physical ties. They are trapped in a financial vacuum with no access to capital and absolutely no way to explain the sudden freeze to their furious investors. And the most satisfying part is that Trey has absolutely no idea any of this is happening. He is completely off the grid, enjoying the final days of his illicit tropical vacation, deliberately ignoring his phone to maintain his fabricated story about a cellular blackout. He is sipping overpriced tequila on a beach in Cabo, completely oblivious to the fact that his entire empire has burned to the ground in his absence. Exactly 1 week after I gave birth, the notification I have been waiting for finally arrives. I am still listed as the primary emergency contact on Trey's global entry and premium travel accounts. A silent alert hits my secure phone confirming that his passport has just cleared customs at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. The prodigal husband has finally decided to return to reality. I know exactly what his next move will be. He is highly predictable. He will not go to the suburban house first. He will head directly to Atlanta General Hospital to play the role of the exhausted but devoted father. He thinks he can walk into my maternity suite, armed with a charismatic smile and a rehearsed apology, and completely smooth over the fact that he abandoned me. I brew a fresh cup of premium dark roast coffee and sit by the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the bustling city. I do not have to be at the hospital to see the execution of my trap. I orchestrated it perfectly before I left. When I signed my discharge papers, I had a very candid conversation with Nurse Sarah, the no-nonsense charge nurse, who guided me through the darkest hours of my labor. I told her exactly what my husband had done, and I gave her very specific instructions on how to handle his inevitable arrival. I slide my phone across the glass table waiting for her update. Less than an hour later, my secure phone vibrates. It is a detailed text message from Nurse Sarah outlining the entire pathetic encounter just as it unfolds. Trey struts into the main lobby of the maternity ward. He is completely failing to look like a man who just spent a week trapped on a miserable, muddy construction site. His skin is glowing with a deep, fresh resort tan. He reeks of expensive coconut sunscreen and duty-free designer cologne. He is holding a massive overpriced plush teddy bear he just bought from the hospital gift shop using his personal emergency debit card because his corporate platinum card was declined at the register. He walks right up to the central reception desk flashing that signature $1 million smile. It is the exact same charming grin he uses to close commercial real estate deals and manipulate vulnerable women. He leans against the counter and feeds Nurse Sarah the elaborate fabricated story he spent the entire flight rehearsing. He claims there were catastrophic road washouts in rural Georgia. He says the logistics were a total nightmare, and he has been desperately trying to get a signal for a week just to find out if his beautiful wife has given birth to their son. He plays the role of the frantic, loving husband to absolute perfection. Nurse Sarah does not smile back. She does not offer him a warm, congratulatory greeting. She looks at his relaxed posture, his fresh sunburn, and the giant plush bear with utter absolute disgust. She does not even bother typing my name into the patient registry system. She just crosses her arms, leans over the high counter, looks him dead in the eye, and delivers the fatal blow. She tells him that his wife checked out of this hospital exactly 7 days ago. The text message from Sarah describes how the color instantly drains from his face. The charming practiced smile completely shatters, breaking apart into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. The heavy plush teddy bear slips from his grip and hits the linoleum floor. He asks her to repeat herself, his voice cracking with sudden terror. She repeats the sentence slowly and loudly enough for the other nurses at the station to hear. She tells him that I gave birth entirely alone and that I walked out of the ward with our newborn son a week ago, leaving absolutely no forwarding information. The panic finally sets in. Trey realizes in a fraction of a second that the narrative he carefully constructed has completely collapsed. He is not walking into a room to manipulate a tired, emotional woman. He is standing in an empty hospital lobby, facing the terrifying reality that his wife is simply gone. He scrambles to pick up the dropped teddy bear, his hands visibly shaking. He practically runs out of the maternity ward, the automated sliding doors closing behind his retreating figure. I watch the screen of my secure phone as the digital blockade I built begins to register his frantic attempts to regain control. The blocked call log on my newly established network starts lighting up. 1 blocked call, 4 blocked calls, 12 blocked calls in the span of 5 minutes. He is standing in the hospital parking garage, frantically dialing my old number over and over again, only to be met with a dead, disconnected tone. He cannot reach me. I am a phantom. I know exactly what is running through his mind right now. He thinks I am sitting at our sprawling suburban estate packing my bags or crying on the custom Italian velvet sofa. He thinks I am angry and waiting for a massive explosive argument. He believes he can speed home, burst through the front doors, drop to his knees, and beg for my forgiveness. He thinks he can leverage our shared history and the massive house we built to anchor me down. He jumps into his car, his heart pounding wildly against his ribs, and speeds onto the highway heading straight toward the exclusive gated community we used to call home. He is driving frantically, breaking every speed limit, desperate to reclaim the narrative before his entire life unravels. I take a slow, deliberate sip of my black coffee, relishing the rich, bitter taste. I look over at Malik, who is cooing softly in his state-of-the-art bassinet, bathed in the warm morning sunlight of our secure penthouse. We are untouchable up here, completely elevated above the wreckage. Trey is racing toward a house he believes is filled with his expensive suits, his luxury electronics, and his waiting wife. He has absolutely no idea that he is speeding directly toward a cavernous, echoing box filled with nothing but an air mattress, a dusty gaming console, and the suffocating scent of his own catastrophic failure. I sit at the glass dining table in my secure penthouse, gently rocking Malik against my chest. My secondary phone is linked directly to the discreet security cameras I had the moving crew leave active inside the suburban estate. I open the live video feed on my laptop screen. I want to see the exact moment the illusion shatters. I have orchestrated this entire sequence of events, and I refuse to miss the grand finale. I watch the driveway camera as Trey's leased sports car comes tearing around the corner. He takes the turn recklessly, his tires squealing against the pavement before he slams the brakes. He does not even bother closing the car door. He sprints up the front walkway, moving with the frantic, erratic energy of a man who feels the ground actively opening up beneath his feet. He punches his security code into the front door keypad. He bursts into the grand foyer and shouts my name. The audio feed captures his voice. It does not sound muffled by custom rugs or absorbed by heavy Italian velvet furniture. His voice echoes sharply, bouncing off bare walls and completely empty hardwood floors. He stops dead in his tracks. The camera mounted in the main living room catches his face in high definition. The deep tropical tan he acquired while sipping margaritas with his mistress seems to physically drain from his skin, leaving him looking pale and sickly. He stares at the vast, cavernous space. The room that once showcased our wealth and his supposed success is completely hollow. The only items occupying the center of the $1.5 million room are his dusty gaming console and the cheap twin-sized air mattress still wrapped in its clear plastic packaging. He drops his expensive leather overnight bag. He begins running frantically from room to room. The camera feeds show him sprinting into the kitchen, finding the stripped cabinets and the missing espresso machine. He races up the sweeping staircase, taking the steps two at a time. He bursts into the master suite, expecting to find my designer clothes or my jewelry boxes. Instead, he finds his own cheap, faded gym shirts and worn-out sneakers hanging sadly in a massive empty walk-in closet. He rushes to the nursery and finds absolutely no trace that a child ever existed in that house. I erased myself and my son from his reality with surgical precision. He stumbles back down the stairs, his chest heaving with panic. He pulls out his phone. He does not try to dial my number again, because he knows the line is dead. He dials his brother DeAndre. I have full administrative access to the corporate email servers and the banking alerts, so I know exactly what kind of hell is waiting for him on the other end of that line. DeAndre is not going to offer him a comforting shoulder to cry on. DeAndre is currently living through his own personal financial apocalypse. I imagine the phone call based on the digital carnage I have been monitoring all morning. Trey demands to know what is going on. He asks where his wife is and where all their furniture went. DeAndre screams back at him, his voice raw with panic. DeAndre tells Trey that the corporate bank accounts are completely frozen. The payroll checks they issued to their commercial contractors yesterday morning have all bounced, triggering a wave of furious phone calls to the office. The company credit cards are declining at every single vendor. The business is completely paralyzed, and they are bleeding credibility by the second. But the absolute peak of DeAndre's meltdown is much more personal and publicly humiliating. I smile as I pull up the confirmation email I received from the luxury automotive dealership earlier today. Just 2 hours ago, a heavy-duty tow truck arrived at DeAndre and Chloe's upscale townhouse. Because I froze the holding company accounts and flagged the fraudulent transfers used to pay for DeAndre's custom luxury SUV, the dealership executed an immediate repossession. DeAndre had to stand in his manicured driveway and watch his ultimate status symbol get dragged away in broad daylight, while his wealthy neighbors watched from their front porches. I can almost hear Chloe hyperventilating in the background of their phone call. The arrogant woman who stood in my hospital recovery room telling me I needed to be a softer, more compliant wife is now staring at complete financial ruin. She realizes that the hot coffee I poured over her fraudulent loan guarantee was not an act of postpartum hysteria. It was a highly calculated declaration of war. Without my immaculate credit score and my signature on those commercial loan documents, their real estate brokerage is legally and functionally dead. The banks have slammed the doors in their faces and they have absolutely zero leverage left to negotiate. The weight of the financial guillotine drops squarely onto Trey's shoulders. He stands in the middle of our empty, echoing house listening to his brother scream through the phone speaker. He finally understands the magnitude of his catastrophic mistake. He thought he was the mastermind of our relationship. He thought he could manipulate the numbers, live a secret double life, and handle his naive wife with a charming smile and a fake apology. He forgot that I built the entire financial architecture of his life. He forgot that I am the one who holds the keys to the kingdom. The realization crashes over him like a physical blow. He cannot pay his construction contractors. He cannot pay his commercial office lease. He cannot even buy a plane ticket to run away because his personal checking and savings accounts have been completely zeroed out. I legally transferred my half into my son's trust and left Trey with a balance that will be devoured by his upcoming auto loan payment. He is financially stranded on an island of his own making. I watch the security feed as Trey sinks down onto the cheap air mattress. He drops his phone onto the bare hardwood floor and buries his face in his hands. He looks like a broken, defeated man. The charismatic, powerful CEO facade is completely gone, leaving behind a pathetic fraud who just realized the game is over. I do not feel a single ounce of pity for him. Pity is a luxury reserved for people who make honest mistakes. Trey made a series of highly calculated choices to betray me, exploit my finances, and abandon me when I was most vulnerable. This profound devastation is simply the cost of doing business with a forensic accountant. He sits there for a long time, the silence of the empty house pressing down on him. He knows that his investors will start calling soon, demanding answers for the bounced checks and the frozen development projects. He knows that without the capital injection from the commercial loan, he tried to trick me into signing the brokerage will default on millions of dollars of debt. He realizes he needs to fix this immediately. He needs to find me. He knows I am the only person on earth who can unfreeze the corporate accounts and save him and his brother from facing federal fraud charges. He picks up his phone again, his hands visibly shaking as he tries to formulate a plan to reach a woman who has completely vanished into thin air. I watch through the secure video feed as Trey frantically dials every mutual contact we have. He paces across the bare hardwood floors of the empty suburban estate, his breathing shallow and rapid. He has completely exhausted every option. He has called my mother, whom I already instructed to block his number. He has called my former corporate colleagues. He is entirely boxed out. I decide he has marinated in his own suffocating panic long enough. I pick up my secure secondary phone and send a single text message to his device. It contains a 12-digit encrypted phone number and a simple instruction. Call now because you only get one chance. The phone in my hand rings less than 5 seconds later. I swipe to answer and put him on speaker, perfectly calm as I adjust Malik in my arms. Trey does not start the conversation with an apology. Narcissists rarely do. He immediately launches into a chaotic barrage of screaming threats. He yells that I have completely lost my mind. He threatens to call the police and report me for kidnapping our newborn son. He screams that he is going to drag me through family court and leave me absolutely penniless for destroying his house and freezing his business accounts. He demands that I transfer the money back immediately before he calls his lawyers. I do not interrupt him. I let him scream until his throat is raw and he runs out of oxygen. When I do not respond to his aggressive posturing, his tone abruptly shifts. The vicious threats melt away into pathetic, desperate victimhood. His voice cracks as he begs me to tell him where I am. He cries that he made a stupid, thoughtless mistake because he was under so much pressure at the brokerage. He swears that he loves me and our family more than anything in the world. He pleads with me to unfreeze the corporate accounts before the banks foreclose on everything he and DeAndre have built. He tells me we can fix this together as a team, just like we always do. I let the heavy silence stretch out until his ragged breathing is the only sound coming through the speaker. I do not raise my voice a single decibel. I speak with the absolute sterile precision of a surgeon holding a scalpel. I tell him I have no interest in fixing a business foundation built entirely on stolen money. Then I drop the fatal blow. I ask him if he enjoyed his expensive premium margaritas in Cabo San Lucas with his new girlfriend Vanessa. I hear him literally choke on his own breath. He stammers, trying to formulate another rapid-fire lie, but I cut him off instantly. I calmly inform him that my forensic audit uncovered much more than his pathetic infidelity and his sloppy embezzlement. I tell him I ran a comprehensive background trace on his beautiful mistress. Vanessa is not just a random woman he picked up at an upscale hotel bar to stroke his fragile ego. She is a highly paid corporate intelligence operative. I explain that she was hired directly by Sterling Horizon, the massive rival real estate conglomerate that has been aggressively trying to acquire their market share for the past 2 years. I outline exactly how incredibly stupid he has been. I tell him that while he was busy showing off his wealth and impressing Vanessa with luxury beach cabanas and expensive seafood dinners, he was actively handing her the keys to his total destruction. She was not sleeping with him for his charm. She was getting close to him to gather hard evidence of the illegal financial practices he and DeAndre were using to artificially inflate their brokerage. I tell him that while he was passed out drunk in their 5-star resort room, Vanessa was likely downloading his unencrypted emails and photographing his unsecured client ledgers. The silence on the other end of the line is absolute. Trey is not just facing a messy divorce and a frozen bank account anymore. He is looking directly down the barrel of federal wire fraud charges and total corporate annihilation. He realizes that his careless arrogance has handed his biggest competitor the exact ammunition they need to trigger a massive investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission. He did not just ruin his marriage. He handed his company's criminal records directly to the enemy. He financed his own corporate espionage using stolen client funds. The facade completely drops. He starts hyperventilating, his breaths coming in short, terrified gasps. He begs me for help. He pleads with me to use my financial expertise to fix the ledgers and hide the missing funds before the rival firm can act. He cries that DeAndre is going to lose everything and that Chloe will take their children and leave. He calls me his brilliant wife, his only hope, his savior. He begs for a face-to-face meeting, promising he will do absolutely anything I want, sign any document I demand, if I just sit down with him and fix the numbers. He says he needs to save the family. I look out at the sprawling Atlanta skyline bathed in the bright morning sun. I tell him I will not be meeting him in private to cover up his felonies. I remind him about the emergency shareholder dinner scheduled for tomorrow evening at the downtown executive club. I know DeAndre frantically organized it last night to try and placate their furious investors after the contractor checks started bouncing. They were planning to lie to their financial backers and blame the frozen accounts on a banking error. I tell Trey I will meet them there. I tell him to wear the cheap, faded gym clothes I left in his closet because he no longer has the right to wear the custom suits I paid for. I end the call and immediately disconnect the encrypted line, leaving him entirely alone with his terror in that empty, echoing house. The financial guillotine is hovering right above their necks, and I am fully prepared to pull the lever. The heavy oak doors of the downtown executive club stand before me. I adjust the cuffs of my tailored emerald green designer suit. I am not here to negotiate a peaceful resolution. I am here to conduct a public execution. I push the doors open and step into the private dining room. The space is a monument to old money and corporate power, with mahogany walls and crystal chandeliers. It is the exact kind of room Trey used to pretend he belonged in. Trey, DeAndre, and Chloe are already there, huddling in the corner like frightened animals. The contrast between my husband and his usual polished facade is staggering. Because I stripped our house bare and took all his custom-tailored suits, he is wearing an ill-fitting faded blazer he must have dug out of a storage bin. He looks disheveled, exhausted, and absolutely terrified. Chloe is gripping her designer clutch, her knuckles white, her fake confidence entirely evaporated. The moment Trey sees me, he breaks away from his brother and rushes toward me. He reaches out trying to grab my arm, pulling out his most desperate pleading voice. He calls me baby. He begs me to step into the hallway so we can fix this as a family before the investors arrive. He promises he will sign whatever I want and do whatever it takes to make things right. I do not even break my stride. I look at him with a gaze so cold, he actually physically recoils. I tell him not to touch me, and I keep walking straight to the head of the massive boardroom table. I take the primary seat, the one reserved for the absolute authority in the room. DeAndre marches over, his face twisted with a volatile mix of anger and panic. He slams his hand on the table and demands that I unfreeze the corporate accounts immediately. He tells me I am destroying everything they worked for, and that I am acting like a hysterical, bitter woman, making a permanent mistake over a temporary lapse in judgment. I simply pull my encrypted laptop from my leather briefcase and open the screen. I do not engage with his aggressive posturing. I look up and signal the two private security contractors I hired, who are standing quietly by the doors. They step forward, crossing their massive arms. DeAndre swallows hard and backs away, his bravado crumbling instantly. The 12 primary investors and shareholders file into the room a few minutes later. These are wealthy, powerful individuals who funded the brokerage based entirely on the financial models and risk assessments I personally designed. They take their seats expecting a standard quarterly update and an explanation for the minor banking glitch DeAndre frantically emailed them about yesterday to explain the bounced checks. I stand up. I do not offer a warm welcome. I do not smile. I connect my laptop to the room's main projection system. The massive screen behind me illuminates the darkened dining room. The first slide is not a title page. It is a highly detailed forensic audit summary of their general ledger. I speak with the clear, unwavering projection of a lead auditor delivering a final verdict. I welcome the board members and inform them that as the majority voting shareholder, I have initiated a mandatory internal fraud investigation. A collective murmur ripples through the room. Trey buries his face in his hands. I click to the next slide. I systematically walk the investors through every single stolen dollar. I project the dummy accounts and the fraudulent shell vendors. I show them the exact routing numbers, linking corporate client deposits to the luxury automotive dealership where DeAndre purchased his custom SUV. I hear a prominent investor gasp in shock as the reality sets in. DeAndre tries to shout that the numbers are fabricated, but a sharp glare from my security team forces him back into his chair. I do not stop. I project the itemized receipts from Cabo San Lucas. I show the $15,000 luxury beach cabana, the expensive seafood dinners, and the couple's massage. I juxtapose these charges directly next to the company expense reports, where Trey maliciously coded them as equipment maintenance and emergency site excavation. I show a high-definition photograph of Trey holding a margarita on the beach, his arm wrapped tightly around his mistress. I clarify to the room that my husband abandoned me in the delivery room to fund a tropical affair using their investment capital. The silence in the boardroom is absolute and suffocating. The investors stare at Trey with pure, unadulterated disgust. The charismatic frontman they trusted is exposed as a sloppy, incompetent thief. Chloe suddenly bursts into loud, theatrical tears, attempting to hijack the narrative. She cries out that I am being cruel and vindictive. She points a shaking finger at me and accuses me of purposely destroying a successful Black-owned family business out of petty jealousy. I look at this white woman, trying to weaponize my race and my family to save her stolen luxury lifestyle. I shut her down with a single surgical sentence. I tell her that this business was never theirs to destroy. I remind her in front of every financial backer in the room that I provided the initial seed capital, the immaculate credit, and the structural foundation that built this entire enterprise. They were simply the employees who managed to break the tools I gave them. Trey slides out of his chair and drops to his knees right there on the expensive dining room carpet. He begs me in front of the entire board not to send him to prison. He cries that we can fix the deficit if I just unfreeze the operating accounts. He says he will do anything I ask and be the husband and father I deserve. I look down at the man who promised to protect me. I feel absolutely nothing. I project the final slide onto the screen. I announce to the room that the corporate accounts are no longer frozen. Trey and DeAndre look up, a brief flash of desperate hope crossing their faces. I crush it instantly. I explain that the accounts are unfrozen because 30 minutes ago, I legally finalized the sale of my 51% controlling stake. I sold my majority shares to Sterling Horizon, the massive rival real estate conglomerate. I watch the information process in Trey's mind. The color drains completely from his face. I remind him about Vanessa, his beautiful tropical mistress. I announce to the room that Vanessa is a senior corporate intelligence operative for Sterling Horizon. While Trey was drinking on the beach, he allowed a corporate spy full access to his unencrypted devices. Sterling Horizon acquired all the evidence of his fraud, and they used it to negotiate an absolute hostile takeover. I tell Trey and DeAndre that they no longer own the brokerage. They are officially locked out of the building. The rival conglomerate now controls every single asset, and their corporate attorneys are actively handing the embezzlement evidence over to the federal authorities. They did not just lose their money, they lost their freedom. The investors immediately pull out their phones, frantically dialing their legal teams to salvage their remaining capital. The room descends into chaotic panic, but it no longer concerns me. My audit is officially concluded. I disconnect my laptop and place it neatly back into my briefcase. Trey is still kneeling on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, begging me to tell him this is a nightmare. Chloe is screaming at DeAndre, slapping his chest while he stares blankly at the wall. I do not look back at them. I walk straight through the heavy oak doors, leaving them to burn in the inferno of their own making. I step out of the private club and into the cool, crisp night air. My chauffeured car is waiting at the curb. I slide into the quiet leather interior and instruct the driver to take me home. The city lights of Atlanta blur past the window, reflecting a world of endless possibility. When I arrive at my secure penthouse, I dismiss the private nanny and walk into the nursery. Malik is sleeping peacefully in his crib, his chest rising and falling in a steady, calming rhythm. I gently brush a soft curl from his forehead. I promised him I would be his ultimate safety net, and I delivered. I walk into the living room and pour myself a glass of vintage red wine. I stand by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the empire I just conquered. I take a slow, deep sip, relishing the absolute total silence of a life finally free of parasites. I stand at the head of the long mahogany table as the 12 primary investors and shareholders take their respective seats. The room is heavy with the scent of expensive catered steak and aged bourbon. These are powerful people who expect a standard quarterly financial review. They expect my husband Trey to stand up in a custom-tailored suit and deliver his usual charismatic pitch about expanding their real estate brokerage into new commercial territories. Instead, they get me. I do not offer a warm greeting. I do not smile or make polite small talk. I simply press a single button on my presentation remote, and the massive digital screen behind me illuminates the darkened dining room. The first slide is not a title page or a colorful marketing vision board. It is a highly detailed forensic audit summary of their general ledger. I speak with the clear, unwavering projection of a lead auditor delivering a final legal verdict. I maintain a highly formal and professional approach, ensuring every word cuts through the air like glass. I inform the board members that as the majority voting shareholder, I have initiated a mandatory internal fraud investigation due to gross financial misconduct. A collective shocked murmur ripples through the room. Trey immediately buries his face in his trembling hands, while DeAndre grips the edge of the heavy table, his knuckles turning stark white. I systematically walk the investors through every single stolen dollar. I do not leave a single stone unturned. I project the dummy accounts, the altered balance sheets, and the fraudulent shell vendors the brothers set up over the past 18 months. I command the room, pulling up a massive expenditure block labeled specifically as digital media monetization. I explain to the board that DeAndre recently requested hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital, claiming the brokerage needed to invest heavily in modern marketing and business strategies to stay competitive. He submitted dozens of falsified invoices for elaborate affiliate marketing frameworks and comprehensive TikTok advertising strategies supposedly designed to target new commercial real estate demographics across the country. I click to the next slide, revealing the true digital footprint of those specific funds. I show the board exactly where their hard-earned investment capital actually went. There were no affiliate marketing frameworks. There were absolutely no TikTok advertising strategies implemented. Those massive marketing budgets were routed directly through a fake shell company and deposited straight into the private account of a luxury automotive dealership in downtown Atlanta. I show them the exact routing numbers linking their corporate client deposits to the custom luxury SUV DeAndre proudly parked in his driveway until yesterday morning, when I personally had the vehicle repossessed. DeAndre violently jumps out of his chair, pointing a shaking, furious finger at the screen. He tries to shout over my presentation, claiming that the numbers are manipulated and that I am deliberately destroying the company out of petty marital spite. I do not even raise my voice to match his panic. I simply look at the two private security contractors I hired to stand strictly by the heavy oak doors. They immediately step forward, crossing their massive arms and staring him down. DeAndre swallows hard, his arrogant bravado instantly crumbling, and he slowly sinks back into his leather chair, unable to meet the eyes of the furious investors surrounding him. I pivot my attention directly to my husband. I project the itemized receipts from Cabo San Lucas onto the massive screen. I show the $15,000 luxury beach cabana, the incredibly expensive seafood dinners, and the high-end couples massage packages. I juxtapose these exact charges directly next to the company expense reports, where Trey maliciously coded them as emergency site excavation and critical equipment maintenance. The audacity of his accounting is staggering. I pull up a high-definition photograph of Trey, holding a frosted margarita on the sunlit beach, his arm wrapped tightly around his mistress Vanessa. The room sits in dead, absolute silence. The silence is so thick it feels suffocating. I clarify to the investors that my husband abandoned me in the hospital delivery room to fund a tropical affair using their investment capital. I tell them he systematically used company money to finance a lavish double life while I was giving birth to his son completely alone. Trey suddenly snaps. The sheer public humiliation completely shatters his carefully constructed facade. He lunges out of his chair, knocking his water glass onto the floor, and charges toward the front of the room. He tries to aggressively grab the microphone from my hand, screaming that I am ruining his life and that I have absolutely no right to humiliate him in front of his financial backers. He does not make it within 5 feet of me. The security guards intercept him immediately, grabbing him firmly by the shoulders and forcefully shoving him back into his seat. They stand directly behind his chair, ensuring he does not move another muscle. He sits there breathing heavily, looking like a trapped animal. I adjust my suit jacket, completely unbothered by his violent outburst. I tell the investors that the financial bleeding does not stop with the two brothers. I click to the next slide, explicitly exposing Chloe. I project her fraudulent business expenses, showing exactly how she billed her premium salon appointments, her designer wardrobe purchases, and her personal luxury vacations to the company under the guise of client entertainment and property staging. I show the board the receipt for the limited edition resort tote bag she carried into my hospital room, proving it was purchased with embezzled corporate funds. Chloe shrinks down into her expensive dining chair, pulling her designer clutch tightly against her chest as the older investors turn to glare at her with pure, unadulterated disgust. I expose them not just to the family, but to the people who actively fund their entire existence. I systematically strip away every ounce of unearned privilege and false prestige they have hidden behind for years. I lay out the undeniable mathematical fact that the brokerage is fundamentally bankrupt. I explain how Trey and DeAndre desperately attempted to use my personal assets and my immaculate credit score to secure a multi-million-dollar commercial loan just to cover up their massive deficit. The investors are absolutely furious. Their faces are red with anger as they begin pulling out their phones, pulling up their own banking apps, and whispering frantically to one another about legal action. The charismatic front they trusted with their wealth is brutally exposed as a sloppy, incompetent thief. I stand tall at the head of the table, holding the absolute ultimate power in the room. I have executed the financial autopsy with flawless precision, and there is absolutely no coming back from the truth I have just laid bare. The heavy silence in the room finally breaks, and the resulting chaos is absolute music to my ears. The investors who were completely silent just moments ago erupt into furious shouting. They turn their collective rage toward Trey and DeAndre, demanding immediate answers for the millions of dollars that have vanished into thin air. Chloe realizes in a fraction of a second that her stolen luxury lifestyle is completely over. She tries to hijack the narrative using the only weapon she has left. She bursts into loud, theatrical tears, sobbing uncontrollably as she points a manicured, shaking finger at me. She screams that I am a bitter, vindictive woman trying to destroy my husband simply because my feelings got hurt. She looks around at the furious investors and cries out that I am intentionally tearing down a successful Black-owned family enterprise out of pure jealousy. She actually attempts to play the victim, acting as if my meticulous accounting is the real crime here, rather than her closet full of embezzled designer goods. I do not raise my voice to match her hysterical pitch. I look at this white woman trying to weaponize my race and my family to save herself from the consequences of her own greed. I shut her down with a single surgical sentence. I tell her that this business was never theirs to destroy. I remind her in front of every single financial backer in the room that I provided the initial seed capital. I provided the immaculate credit score. I built the structural foundation that made this entire enterprise possible. I look at Trey and DeAndre and state the undeniable fact that they were simply the employees who managed to break the expensive tools I gave them. Trey realizes that the investors are not going to save him and that his brother is entirely powerless. The charismatic facade he wore for years melts away, leaving nothing but a terrified coward. He slides out of his expensive leather chair and drops to his knees right there on the dining room carpet. He crawls toward me, ignoring the disgust of the billionaires watching him. He begs me in front of the entire board not to send him to prison. He cries that we can fix the deficit if I just unfreeze the operating accounts right now. He swears that he will do anything I ask. He promises to be the husband and father I deserve if I just give him one more chance to make things right. I look down at the man who promised to protect me. I look at the man who left me alone in a delivery room so he could drink on a beach with another woman. I feel absolutely nothing. There is no lingering love. There is no pity. There is only the cold satisfaction of an audit reaching its final, inevitable conclusion. I press the button on my presentation remote one last time. I announce to the room that the corporate accounts are actually no longer frozen. Trey and DeAndre look up, a brief flash of desperate hope crossing their tear-stained faces. I crush that hope instantly. I explain that the accounts are unfrozen because exactly 30 minutes ago I legally finalized the sale of my 51% controlling stake. I sold my majority shares to Sterling Horizon, the massive rival real estate conglomerate that has been trying to acquire our market share for 2 years. I watch the information process in Trey's mind. The color drains completely from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost. I remind him about Vanessa, his beautiful tropical mistress. I announce to the room that Vanessa is not just a random woman he picked up at a hotel bar. She is a senior corporate intelligence operative for Sterling Horizon. I explain that while Trey was drinking margaritas on the beach, he allowed a corporate spy full unrestricted access to his unencrypted devices. Sterling Horizon acquired all the evidence of his fraud from his own phone. They used that exact evidence to negotiate an absolute hostile takeover with me. I look Trey dead in the eye and tell him that he no longer owns the brokerage. DeAndre no longer owns the brokerage. They are officially locked out of the building and their keycards have been deactivated. The rival conglomerate now controls every single asset, and their corporate attorneys are actively handing the embezzlement evidence over to federal authorities as we speak. I tell Trey that he did not just lose his money and his marriage. He handed his company's criminal records directly to his biggest competitor. He lost his freedom. The investors do not wait for another word. They immediately pull out their phones, frantically dialing their legal teams to salvage whatever capital they have left. The room descends into absolute panic, but it no longer concerns me. My audit is officially concluded. I disconnect my laptop and place it neatly back into my leather briefcase. Trey is still kneeling on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, and begging me to tell him this is just a nightmare. Chloe is screaming at DeAndre, slapping his chest while he stares blankly at the wall, completely paralyzed by the reality of his impending federal prison sentence. I do not look back at any of them. I smooth the jacket of my flawless designer suit and walk straight through the heavy oak doors, leaving them to burn in the inferno of their own making. I step out of the private club and into the cool, crisp night air. My chauffeured car is waiting right at the curb. I slide into the quiet leather interior and instruct the driver to take me home. The vibrant city lights of Atlanta blur past the tinted window, reflecting a world of endless possibility. I lean back against the seat, feeling a profound weight lift off my shoulders. I am no longer carrying the burden of a fraudulent marriage or a family of leeches. When I arrive at my secure high-rise penthouse, I dismiss the private nanny and walk quietly into the nursery. Malik is sleeping peacefully in his crib, his tiny chest rising and falling in a steady, calming rhythm. I gently brush a soft curl from his forehead. I promised him the day he was born that I would be his ultimate safety net, and I delivered on that promise. I secured his financial future and eradicated the toxicity that would have poisoned his life. I walk out of the nursery and step into the sprawling living room. I pour myself a generous glass of vintage red wine. I walk over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the glittering empire of the city I just conquered. I take a slow, deep sip of the wine, relishing the rich, complex flavor. The high-rise is completely silent. There are no lies being told in this space. There is no deception hiding in the shadows. I take a deep breath and smile. The parasites have been exterminated and my new life has officially begun. The most profound lesson I extracted from the collapse of my marriage is that absolute financial independence is not merely a safety net. It is the ultimate equalizer. For years, I operated under the dangerous illusion that shrinking my capabilities would somehow preserve the fragile ego of the man I chose to marry. I provided the initial capital, meticulously engineered the corporate structures, and silently balanced the complex ledgers, while Trey, DeAndre, and Chloe played the roles of highly successful, self-made executives. I fatally mistook their continuous financial reliance on me for genuine familial loyalty. When I found myself completely alone in that sterile delivery room, bringing my son into the world while my husband funded a tropical affair with my credit, the reality crystallized. You cannot purchase devotion, and you cannot negotiate with parasites. Their betrayal was never just a simple matter of infidelity. It was a calculated systemic extraction of my resources by people who viewed my relentless work ethic solely as a tool for their own entitlement. They collectively assumed that a new mother's physical vulnerability would easily override a lead auditor's sharp precision. The true revelation is that genuine power does not require you to raise your voice, stage a theatrical confrontation, or plead for basic human respect. Power is entirely methodical. It is the quiet, strategic preservation of your assets, the meticulous gathering of undeniable digital evidence, and the absolute courage to legally sever ties with those who seek to consume your peace. I learned the hard way that boundaries without severe financial or legal consequences are merely suggestions. By maintaining absolute control over the structural integrity of my wealth, I dismantled their fraudulent empire without ever compromising my own professional dignity. We are frequently conditioned to bear the immense emotional and financial weight of our families, expected to forgive gross betrayals simply to maintain a unified public image. We are instructed to absorb the trauma while silently shielding the perpetrators from accountability. I reject that harmful narrative entirely. My intellect and my resources were never meant to be a shield for their corporate crimes. They were designed to build an impenetrable fortress for my child. The moment you stop financing your own disrespect, the individuals who relied on your compliance will inevitably collapse under the weight of their own incompetence. You owe absolutely nothing to those who only value you for what they can extract. If you have ever had to quietly dismantle the false narratives of those who underestimated your strength, share your experience in the comments below and subscribe for more discussions on reclaiming your absolute power.